Good morning, everyone, or good noon, or good night, wherever you may be. I'm Karen Curry Parker, and I'm so excited to welcome you all here for Deconditioning by Design. We are excited every time we do this to welcome people from all over the world to talk about human design, quantum human design, how we can use quantum human design as a powerful tool to help you align and help your clients align with the highest state of wellness and well-being. I'm so excited to have you all here today. We're going to be talking about what really is honestly some of my favorite information about human design. This is the place where I kind of get to geek out a little bit. I am coming to you today just a little less than a week away from defending my dissertation. I've been doing research using some of the things we're going to be talking about today for my dissertation, for my PhD, and I'll be excited as we go through the material today to share a little bit about some of the research that I've been doing with quantum human design and using quantum human design as a storytelling tool. So let's all take a nice deep breath. I'm going to give you a lot of information today. I'm going to share with you some information today at the end of the webinar that I don't share very often. And for those of you who are here because you feel called to be a healer or you're working as a healer and you're really maybe exploring some of the same questions that I've been exploring about how to use human design as a tool to support and accelerate your client's process, your client's ability to really tap into higher states of wellness and well-being. Today, I'm going to share with you some information I don't share very often, and I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation how just even understanding something as simple as how the centers are operating in somebody's chart can give you really, really important, insightful information that can support you in helping your clients or yourself make dramatic shifts in your perception of yourself, your personal narrative, and activating higher states of creativity and wellness. So I also just want to encourage you as we go through this information to think about it in terms of how you can better help your clients. You might also find that some of the things that we talk about today might be really important for you as well. Personally, you might really relate to it. It might be something really that might open up your mind about your own life. I want to encourage you as we go through this information to really explore it with great curiosity, with an open mind and an open heart, and to really look at anything that might come up for you without judgment. Simply see it as an opportunity for you to explore more deeply how you can bring yourself back into greater alignment with the true story of who you are, that story that only you in this entire cosmos, you're living in a story that only you can fulfill. That's how important, that's how vital your job is. So without further ado, we'll get started. And as I said, this is Deconditioning by Design. So my name, if you don't know me, is Karen Curry Parker. I'm the founder and the creator of Quantum Human Design and the Quantum Alignment System. I'm a multiple best-selling author. I'm one of the world's top human design writers, and my books have been published in many languages, including in German. I am also the co-founder of Grace Point Publishing and the co-founder of Human Design Press. I've been in EFT, emotional freedom techniques. This is a meridian-based acupressure technique. I've been an EFT practitioner since 2000. I was one of the very first people trained to use EFT. I am a professional life coach. I was trained in life coaching actually before I even encountered human design in 1998. I am an original student of Ra Uru Hu. I actually worked for Ra for many years in the early 2000s. I've been teaching human design since 1999. I am a Quantum University guest lecturer. And as I shared with you earlier, I am very close to completing my PhD, 1 week away from completing my PhD. I did research on the impact of narrative, personal narrative, and your immune system, how the story you tell actually impacts your immune response. I am a TEDx presenter. You can find my TED Talk on TED.com. And I am the host of the many award-nominated but never award-winning yet Quantum Revolution podcast. So, we're going to talk today about how to live your life as the person you were born to be. So, before we start looking at how do you create this life, how do you build a life that is the life that is a reflection of the person you were born to be, we have to really start first in this conversation with breaking down the process of how do we manifest our life. How did you get here? How did you arrive at the point at which you're at today? And what do you maybe need to shift or change, or what do you need to learn how to support your clients in shifting and changing so that they can get a different set of results? So I'm going to break down for you what I like to call basic quantum creativity. We're going to look at what I'll call the building blocks of the creative process and why and how your human design is so essential as part of the way in which you create your life. So, the first thing we're going to look at when we talk about the building blocks of the creative equation or the parts of the creative equation is the very first, most essential part. And that essential part is called the quantum field. Sometimes we call it the unmanifest reality. So, right now, at this very minute, as you are watching this presentation on your phone or your computer, you are literally swimming, sitting in this moving field of infinite possibilities. You have created a small section of those possibilities in your physical, tangible life, but around you, swimming and zooming and moving around you, is a field of infinite potentials. Anything that you can dream of, think of, anything that you can imagine, and much, much, much more exists in this field of non-manifest reality. The second component in the creative equation is called the mental and the emotional body. This has a lot of different names. This is the name that I learned in school. You might know this is differently, or you might have a different name for this part of the creative equation. But basically, this is a filter. This is a place where you hold your conditioning. Conditioning is a word we use a lot in human design. This is a place where you store all the emotional artifacts of everything that's happened to you, the beliefs you learned from your families, the beliefs you cultivated as a result of your lived experiences, your memories. This is even where we hold our ancestral programming. This is where we hold memories that influence our choices that come from maybe not our own lived experiences, but actually come from our ancestral lineage, from our parents and grandparents and great grandparents and beyond. The next part of the creative process is called the subtle body. Again, this is a part of the creative process that has a lot of different names. Sometimes people call this the biofield. Sometimes people call this your aura. Sometimes this is your energy field. But basically, anytime you are about to manifest or create something into your physical life, or you're in the process of discreating something out of your physical life, you have an energetic template, a blueprint, if you will, that's holding your physical reality in place. So if you go see, let's say, a really good energy healer or a really good intuitive, and they look at your energy field, your subtle body field, and they see, oh, there's a little bit of a disruption in your subtle body field. Looks like you might have been sick last week. They can read your aura or your energy field to see, like, what are you discreating or what are you in the process of letting go of? Or they might be able to look at your subtle body field and say, oh, you're about to really have a great breakthrough in your career. I can see, like, in your aura, this energy is building for a big shift. Last but definitely not the least, this is the part we love the most. Our manifested reality is the final component of the creative process. This is your life right now. And it's not fixed, it's not static, it's dynamic. You're actually living in a feedback loop, and the manifested reality is reflecting back to you your relationship between you, your conditioning field, your energy, and your physical world. And as we look at our physical world, in particular, when we look at our physical world through the lens of health and wellness and well-being, and when I talk about health and wellness, I'm not just talking about the body, I'm talking about your relationship with money, your relationship with your loved ones, your relationship with source, your career, your creative fulfillment, your lifestyle. All of these are part of our inclusive, holistic definition of health and wellness. So when we're looking at our physical world, our physical life, our manifested reality, it's just reflecting back to us the nature of the story we tell about who we are. And of course, if we don't like our experience of our manifested reality, then we can change it because it's a feedback loop. It's not static. We're not stuck in it. We have the opportunity, when we understand how to work with our energy and our creative power, how to begin to shift our experience and our manifestations of reality. So, an easier and maybe a simpler way of looking at what I just shared with you is this screen right here. You'll see on this slide at the bottom these very fun loving, highly abundant women who are experiencing life right now. This is your life right now. And above the middle of this slide, you'll see the quantum field, and in the middle, across this slide, you'll see a filter. Right, this filter basically is part of what is influencing which of those infinite potentials are you consciously or usually unconsciously choosing out of the quantum field. So if we want to change the story, we want to change our experience on the material plane, then we have to start first by looking at what's in this filter. What's in the story that you tell about yourself that's influencing which of those infinite possibilities are you collapsing or dropping into your physical reality? So you are the story you tell about yourself. Quantum physicists, when they look at the quantum field, what they see is that quantum particles, the building block of matter, right? We learned this since somewhere in second grade, I think we learned this. And I remember learning this, and they talked about how molecules are mostly space. And I remember looking at my desk when I was 7, like, whoa, this is mostly space, right? When quantum physicists look at quantum particles, the building block of the material world, what they know is that they can measure the movement of a quantum particle. So they can measure where it's moving, or they can measure the location based on their expectation where they think it's going to be, but they can't measure both at the same time. So quantum particles are very interesting. They behave according to expectation. If you have an expectation about where a quantum particle is going to be, it'll drop out of movement into form. It'll locate according to what your expectation is. So just to review, because this is just a significant piece of understanding, you can either measure the movement of the particles, or the location of the particles, but never both at the same time. So movement, this field of infinite potential that we live in, is in constant movement, and movement of a quantum particle represents pure potential. Location, having it drop out of movement into a specific place according to expectation, is really what is the definition of manifestation. The meanings we have, or the expectations we have about a potential, determine what we manifest. So meaning is what determines what we manifest. So the meanings we have about possibilities and potentials for our life, those meanings that we have are determined by our conditioning field, meaning the mental and emotional body, those memories, those imprintings, those beliefs, those lived experiences that you had, including your ancestral lineage. And if we want to create a different state of well-being, we have to start first by changing the meanings or changing the expectations that we have. Well, what does that mean? What that means is that our conditioning determines what we experience in our life, our lived experiences, the beliefs we have, our life growing up, our family of origin, our ancestral lineage, the things your teacher said to you in 3rd grade, all of those things that make the story of who you perceive yourself to be. That's your conditioning, and your conditioning is a big part of influencing what you're experiencing in your life right now. So we're going to do something fun for just a minute. So I want you to look at this image on this slide, and I want you to think of the word money. And I'm going to give you 20 seconds. For 20 seconds, I want you just to think of the word money. Think of the word money. And as you think of the word money, I want you to take a moment in chat. Just go to the chat. You can find the chat button below and you'll see it on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay. I want you to write down anything that came up for you when you thought of the word money. It can be a thought, it can be a feeling, it can be a belief. So we have, I want money, it's scary, it's energy, it's elusive, it's freedom, it's abundance, it's currency, it's security, it's fluid, it's contraction, it's my one, expansion, unlimited, big sigh, abundance, job, flowing in, freedom and abundance, I froze, abstraction, neutral, pressure in the chest, scam, enough, possibilities, every drug dealing movie, okay? There's more to the world, capitalism, growing, I like money, awesome. So if you scroll through here, thank you all for participating in this exercise. If you scroll through what you all have collaborated and shared in the chat, you'll see there's a lot of variety in what we wrote and what we thought about and what we experienced even emotionally when you all saw the image of money. So we'll go back to our slide here for just a minute. Here's what just happened. When you saw that image of money and you heard me say the word money, your brain produced a photon storm. That photon storm in turn caused your brain to produce neurotransmitters. So I'm going to stop here for just a second. Okay, so I just want to revisit this because it's so powerful. Your brain created a photon storm that then triggered inside of your brain the production of neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters are a chemical. We can measure it in the lab. So stop for just a second. Take your right hand, stretch it over your left shoulder if you can, and pat yourself on the back because you just turned light, photons, into matter. How powerful are you? Okay. When your brain produced these neurotransmitters in turn stimulated an emotional frequency of energy. So your head ajna triggered this photon storm, made these neurotransmitters, activated the emotional solar plexus, and this is true for you whether you're defined or open. And in that activation, either caused your heart to go into a state of coherence, which is a highly creative state rooted in well-being, or triggered an experience of non-coherence where you may have kicked yourself into a low-grade fight or flight response. What determined whether you went into coherence or non-coherence is the meaning that you have about money. And if you look in our chat, you'll see there's a lot of variety in our meanings that we have about money. For some of you, money was like, yeah, and for some of you, money was like contraction, right? Money is just an archetype. It's just something we give each other in exchange for value, right? That's all it is. It's the meanings we give the archetype of money that determine or are part of determining our experience of money in the world. You literally just created an energy field, an emotional frequency of energy that's part of the creative process just simply by thinking about money and putting into those thoughts the meanings that you have around money. So photons are part of the creative medium. Well, what inspired the movement of the photons in the first place? Your story. The story you tell about who you are, including your human design, your conditioning, your lived experience, how your energy works in the world, all the things your parents said, everything that comprises who you think you are, the narrative you tell about your life, and in particular, this case, the narrative you tell about money, went into what kinds of emotional neurotransmitters did you create in response to an image of money. So if you want to shift your reality to create the reality you want to be experiencing, you have to tell a story that matches what you want. And if we're working with clients, and we're supporting our clients in transforming their experience of the world, maybe we're helping them create greater states of physical wellness. We're helping them have a better relationship with money. We're helping them build better relationships with the people in their life so they love. We're helping them find their right path, their career, their purpose. Whatever it is that you might be doing to either help yourself or others, if you want to accelerate and amplify your progress and your capacity to support clients, you have to be able to support them in a very conscious and deliberate way, rewrite the story that they're telling so that the story that they're telling matches the story they want to be living. So if they want to be living a story that has a better relationship with money, then you have to start with telling a better story. And if the story is what's creating the reality, then you have to really explore the question, who are you? Who is the you that's creating your reality? And what story are you telling about yourself? And of course, another way of really looking at that question is, how have you been conditioned? So the chart itself shows us that we are designed to be abundant. We're designed to be creative. We're designed to be loved and loving. We're designed to be powerful. We're actually designed to be connected to source. We are designed to be supported, and we're designed to be compassionate. If this is the nature of our design, well, what knocks us off track? How do we get to where we are somehow telling the world a story or telling ourselves a story that denies us the experience of our natural state of support and compassion and love and power? What's knocking us off track so that our story isn't really the true story of who we really are? So conditioning is really what knocks us off track. Now, I like to define conditioning as this. Conditioning is, if we look at the shadow of conditioning is any part of your story that has facilitated or allowed for you to internalize the message that it is not okay for you to be who you are or how you are. And really, what happens is when we internalize that message that I can't be who I am, it's not safe, it's not profitable, it's not whatever, and I can't be how I am because how I am doesn't create what I need to create. How I am isn't going to make me successful in the way that society defines successful. When we internalize that story, it literally puts us in a low grade, a chronic low grade of fight or flight. It creates stress. It causes us to internalize that message as a threat to who we are, to our identity. And we oftentimes react then to life based on that internalization of that message in a defensive way, in a reactionary way. We literally have low grade, what I'll call micro traumatic PTSD that causes us to engage in behaviors in such a way that we oftentimes do things to keep our true identity hidden or secret. We sometimes self-sabotage ourselves because it's a way of protecting our true identity, our authentic identity, because we don't feel safe being out in the world as the person we were born to be. So in the next little section here, I want to break down for you the true definition of conditioning. And this definition of conditioning goes beyond traditional human design. So traditional human design talks about conditioning happening when you have openness in your center. So if you look at your human design chart or your quantum human design chart and you see those 9 geometric shapes on your chart, those shapes correlate to the 7 chakras from the Hindu chakra system. Those shapes represent core archetypal themes in your chart. Those core archetypal themes relate to specific parts of the body and specific archetypal themes that influence how your energy operates. In traditional human design, we talk about your white centers, those centers that are white or open on your chart, as being the source of conditioning. And actually, what we know from science is that there's more to the conditioning process than openness. And I'm saying this not because I want to, in any way, devalue what Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, taught us about human design. I just always want to remind people that Ra passed in 2011. That's 12, almost 13 years ago. And in 2011, a lot of the science that we have now about neuroplasticity and genetic regulation and how the brain actually responds to language and to life. We have had just this huge surge in the last 10 years in scientific research that has allowed us to build upon the information that Ra left us when he passed. So today I want to break down for you not only openness by center, which is a very powerful way to start looking at a human design chart and using it as an assessment tool to help you help your clients accelerate their results. But I also want to look a little bit more at some of the new science around what goes into forming the story, the narrative we tell about who we are. So we're going to talk today about openness by center, imprinting. We're going to talk about generational energy patterns. We're going to look at genetics, and then we're going to look at our lived experiences. So the first thing we're going to talk about is openness by center. And as I said, in traditional human design, this is a lot of what we talk about when we talk about conditioning. So you have 9 energy centers. Sometimes some of them are going to be colored in, some of them will be white, unless you're a reflector, and they'll all be white. So these centers, when they're open, when they're white on your chart, that when it's open, it represents where you receive energy from people and oftentimes also from the planets. It's where you take energy in from the world around you. And you don't just take energy in your openness, you actually take energy in and you amplify it. So what happens in your open centers, in all those white parts of your chart, is you're going through life and you're experiencing this amplified energy that you're taking in from the world around you. Now, that amplified energy is a great source of wisdom for you. It actually, ultimately, when you understand how your openness works, it's a great source of awareness and understanding about the world and the people around you. Think of it this way: your open centers are like a big basket. And anytime you encounter energies from people around you, you're experiencing a variation on a theme in an open center. And you can take that experience that you get from someone else and think of it as kind of like a little gem. I'm a big fan of diamonds, right? So think of it as like every time you encounter an experience in your open center, it's like a little diamond of experience and understanding that you put in this basket. And over time, as you really learn to understand your openness, you start to really recognize that you've got this big basket filled with all these gems that gives you a lot of insight and ultimately even choice over how you're going to experience and play with that energy. So if you're, for example, if you have an open emotional solar plexus, that's this triangle on the right-hand side, you're experiencing amplified emotional energy from people around you all the time. And over time, as you really learn how to work with that energy, you stop reacting to other people's emotional energies. And you start to realize, wow, there's a lot of different ways that we can experience emotional energy. And because you understand that, you can actually, for short periods of time, because one of the things that's important to understand about open centers is you can't hold that energy indefinitely. That's why, for example, if you have this sacral center open, meaning if you're a manifester or an initiator in quantum human design, and a projector or an orchestrator in quantum human design, a reflector or a calibrator in quantum human design, this center on your chart will be white, which means you're going to be prone to burnout if you don't understand how to use that workforce, life force energy in a sustainable way. You can't hold it indefinitely. And when you do, you run the risk of actually not knowing when enough is enough and potentially really burning yourself out. When you understand how that energy works, then you have choices. You know how to use that energy. You can choose to borrow it from others for short periods of time and use it to your benefit. And then when you're done using it, get some good rest and go about the rest of your life. So if you have an open solar plexus, you're really wise about emotional energy. You understand people's emotional responses. And that gives you choice as to whether you're going to choose to jump into an emotional situation and play with it or play in it or not. So in the next few slides, I'm going to go through the themes of the open centers, because what happens in traditional human design, and this is brilliant, is when we look at an open center, we know that each of these 9 open centers has a predictable behavioral pattern, And that predictable behavioral pattern is oftentimes part of the story that we tell about who we are, part of our conditioned narrative. And when we start to learn about these conditioned narratives, we can stop putting them into our personal narrative. We can rewrite our understanding of these centers and how they operate and regain more sovereignty over not only our own personal narrative, but how to best use our energy in a sustainable and a healthy way. So let's start first with the head center. The head center is a pressure center. It's all about inspiration. The head center, when it's open, and that will be most of you, you're under pressure to figure things out. And oftentimes that's married with a fear of the unknown. And so when you have an open head center, sometimes part of your story is about trying to figure things out. You're always trying to figure things out, and you're always under pressure to figure things out. The next center we're going to look at briefly is the ajna. The ajna, when it is open, is all about struggling for certainty. So we know that when you have an open ajna, you also always have an open head center. So you're always going to be under pressure to figure out things so that you can be certain. And in reality, your gift is not your certainty. Your gift is your ability to see a thought or an idea from multiple different perspectives. And that's the gift that you bring to the world. But when you're trying to be certain, when you're trying to hold on to a fixed idea or hold on to a fixed belief, this is important when we think about manifesting. Sometimes when you have an open ajna, it's hard to hold on to a fixed vision, right? It's hard to visualize the same thing every day. And you don't actually need to visualize the same thing every day. Really, what you need to do is be able to hold the emotional energy. So you can use your imagination and your dreams and think about anything you want related to what you're intending. You don't have to lock onto a fixed idea. But for some of you, that holding on to that fixed idea is hard because that's not your natural way that your energy works. The throat center, when it's open, because it needs recognition and attention, it oftentimes can have a behavioral pattern that causes it to struggle for recognition. And sometimes when we have a non-motorized, that means you're a generator or a projector, or we have an open throat, and that can be true for a generator, projector, or a reflector. And when we have a non-motorized or an open throat, sometimes we make choices in life in order to get attention, in order to get recognition. And it's not necessarily what we want to do, but we want the attention because we need it energetically. The G center, when it is open, has a tendency to question its lovability. And again, when we look at motivations and drivers in life and our stories that we tell about who we are, if you question your lovability, not only does it make it difficult for you to engineer direction in your life, it actually can make it difficult for you to even have good relationships in your life. The will center, when it's open, and that's going to, again, be most of us. When the will center is open, there's a tendency for you to be motivated by a need to prove your value in the world. And so oftentimes we're pushing with will instead of aligning with purpose. And we're trying to prove our value in the world. The spleen center, when it is open, there's a tendency when the spleen center is open to hold on to things for longer than you should, including bad relationships, old stories, old patterns. And so oftentimes when we go through the deconditioning process for the open spleen, we have to practice letting go in a healthy way. The emotional solar plexus, when it's open, because you're emotionally empathic, it's very easy if you have an emotional solar plexus, that's gonna be about half of you, to have behavioral patterns that cause you to give up what you need and want, to back away from difficult conversations, to be somewhat conflict avoidant, and oftentimes adopt patterns to try to please everybody in order to regulate and try to control the emotional environment around you. When you have an open sacral, the open sacral has a theme of not knowing when enough is enough. And as I just talked about a minute ago, that means we can tend to overwork and burn ourselves out. And last but not least, when you have an open root center, again, another pressure center, and oftentimes this open root center puts you under pressure to get things done so that you can be free, and it can be very stressful. And so oftentimes when you have an open root and we go through the process of really deconditioning the center, we have to learn to embrace the question, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I don't do this right now? And learning how to be with the pressure, but not bend to the pressure, and not let that pressure stop you from playing and resting and restoring yourself so that you can stay sustainable in the world. So that's the traditional human design take on conditioning. Let's break this down a little bit more further and look at some of the other things that also can condition us. The second thing that can condition us is imprinting. This comes from your family of origin. So your parents' type and centers are going to create certain behavior patterns, and those patterns will become part of your imprinting. So, for example, it is not an uncommon experience for me in doing readings and teaching human design to have manifesting generators, time benders, who are raised by projectors, orchestrators, who think that they are projectors. The manifesting generators think they're projectors. Why is that? Well, oftentimes what I find is when we start dialoguing about, well, why do you think you're a projector? It's because they've been imprinted by their parents who act like projectors. And so they also think, hey, I'm also a projector, because obviously they didn't know human design when they were growing up. And they have internalized their behavior, their parents' behavioral patterns. This can also come too from our parents' attitudes about money, our parents' attitudes about relationships, about the world. We're imprinted by our family of origin. And if you look at how the brain actually develops, you'll see that literally the brain of a small child is designed to be imprinted. It's a big part of what constructs the story we tell about who we are. The third thing about conditioning, and this actually also comes from human design, and I just think personally it's pretty cool. You actually inherit elements in your human design chart from your grandparents. And of course, if you have children yourself, your children have inherited elements of their human design from your parents. And so you start to see that between these three generations, there's this repeating cycle of intergenerational energy patterns. And so your children have energy patterns that are similar to your parents. And now you get to rework your experience of that energy pattern, but now you're the parent instead of the kid. And of course, that keeps going and going and going. This is why actually deconditioning and shifting your behavioral pattern as a parent is so powerful, because literally you disrupt sometimes these unhealthy intergenerational family patterns. The fourth thing that imprints us, and this is a really just, I think we have just barely begun to scratch the surface in this field of study. We know that there are protein codes that regulate how your DNA gets expressed. So you are born with certain gene codes. Those gene codes have protein codes that regulate whether these gene codes get turned on or off. So you can be prone to, say, diabetes, but there are factors that you can engage in that will influence how those protein codes work, that will turn those markers for diabetes on or off. We also know now that those protein codes hold memory. They literally can hold ancestral memory. And so some of what makes up the story of who we are is rooted in ancestral memory. So you can carry up to 14 generations. Think about that for a minute. 14 generations of memory that impacts the way in which your genes behave. Think about that for a minute. And as I said, we're just beginning to really even just start to understand this. But for many of you, some of the things that you might be experiencing in your life. So for example, anxiety. This actually started by studies done by a physician named Rachel Yehuda, who started to notice that grandchildren of Holocaust survivors had higher rates of anxiety. And when she started to really look at this on a genetic level, what she saw was that these kids were reacting to programming in the protein codes on their genes, making them more prone to anxiety, because they are carrying memory on a genetic level. Now, if you start to really sit and think about that for a minute, I sometimes don't want to think about that for a minute, but start and think about that for a minute. How many of us are reacting to life based on the things that happen in our ancestral lineage? And that part of really what's up for us right now on this planet is breaking these ancestral bonds, breaking these ancestral agreements, and rewriting this programming. You can reprogram this programming. You can shift and change the way your genes are upregulated or downregulated. And in fact, using the emotional freedom techniques, EFT, is an incredibly powerful way to break in here and shift these genetic patterns. And in fact, we have more than 15,000 peer-reviewed studies now that show the efficacy of using the emotional freedom techniques to get in there and start reprogramming some of this old ancestral lineage, all these old ancestral memories. Last but definitely not least, and I don't know why we don't talk about this a lot in traditional human design, but we certainly talk about this in quantum human design, your lived experiences, the things that happened to you, the things that people said to you, the things you witnessed. I would even say the things sometimes you watched on TV or on your phone or on media, your lived experience, your life experience is part of forming the story you tell about who you are. And some experiences, negative experiences, can condition us into a state of lack and constriction. And of course, the opposite is also true. We can have lived experiences that are expansive, that contribute in a positive way to a healthy story about who we are. Deconditioning, the process of untangling ourselves away from all these factors that might be limiting us, keeping us away from remembering our natural state of abundance, our natural state of wellness, our power, our lovability, our value. The process of deconditioning is a process of breaking us away from these elements that are influencing the story we tell about ourselves, and ultimately is a process that empowers us to take back control over the story we tell about who we are, so that we become ultimately sovereign over our own story. When you're in charge of the story you tell about who you are, when you decide, when you get to choose the story you tell, then you get to shift what you create in your life. So, in the research that I just completed, one of the things that we did is we looked at IgG and IgE response to storytelling. So, I had people tell a story about something disempowering that happened to them. So, we took them in the lab, they shared the story. And when they were done telling the story, we measured their immune response. And actually, what we saw is that when people told a story that was a disempowering story about something that happened to them, their immune response went down. I then had them rewrite that story so that when they retold that story, they emerged from that story either with a really strong lesson in place, they benefited in some way from that traumatic experience, or I had them rewrite the story so they reframed their perspective in such a way that they were empowered as a result of what happened. Now, I told them before they rewrote that story, they could make it up, that it didn't have to be true. If they didn't believe it yet, it was okay. That I was just going to have them go through the storytelling process and retell the story in such a way that they emerged with a lesson or a blessing, more empowered. When we went back and had them read the new story, the more empowered story, the story with the blessing in it, even if they didn't believe the story, their immune response went up. Storytelling is an incredibly powerful way to start shifting our point of creation. But storytelling has its own challenges. When we're looking at our clients and we're trying to figure out, well, what part of this story do we need to change? Or you are maybe looking at your own story and you're trying to figure out, well, what part of the story, what meanings do I need to cultivate to make my story better? We're confronted with a couple of problems. And problem number one is, how do we cultivate a healthy set of meanings that help us choose consciously how to create well-being in every area of our life? So here I want to just break down for you why quantum human design is such a powerful tool to help us with this. Your human design is actually a way of cataloging the story you're telling. If you think about it, all of the parts in the human design story are really just parts of a story, right? And it's a pretty codified parts of a story. So you can use these parts as a way of consciously choosing to write for yourself a better story. So it gives us a way of changing our personal narrative. It gives us a Rolodex. I've been told not to use the word Rolodex. I'll call it a database. It gives us a database of the parts of our story. It teaches us a lot about what is our soul curriculum, what did we came here to do, And it helps us explore better how we interface between the quantum field and our creative power, or between you and what I like to call your muse. So, again, going back to our little slide here, right? Your filter is the story you tell about who you are, and your filter contains your human design. Your human design is part of that story, your experience of yourself as the creator of your reality. So we know that human design is a synthesis of Eastern and Western astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, Judaic Kabbalah, and quantum physics. Well, what do all these systems have in common? They're all comprised of archetypes. Okay, they're all comprised of symbols, patterns, or character types in a story. So it's a collection of ancient and modern cross-cultural archetypes. Well, our chart is really each just a living collection that's part of your personal story. It's just a living collection of all these archetypes, story you're choosing to tell about your chart. So this is a word cloud I created. This is a word cloud I made of all the gates in my personal chart. And if we start looking at it this way, if you start breaking it down and looking at the words, you start to see, oh, there's some themes going on here, and I can rewrite these themes in the way that I choose. So an archetype is neutral. Let's go back and talk about money. We looked at money, right? Money is a neutral theme. You decide how you're going to express that theme in your life. So maybe if you were thinking, I don't have enough, or I'm already worried about rent next month, or my house payment, or you're freaked out about money, you might be experiencing the low expression or the shadow element of the archetype of money. If you're like, money comes to me every day in the mail, I make money while I sleep, money is my best friend, and you have a really good solid story about money, then you're telling a money story that's expressing the highest potential of the archetype of the energy of money. Your chart is just like that. All those parts in your chart, your type, the lines in your profiles, the themes of your centers, the themes of your circuitry, the themes of your gates, all of those parts of your chart are just neutral. The way in which you're interpreting those parts of your story are actually, as we decondition, up to you. And the more you learn about your human design, and the more you decondition your own story so that you bring your story back into alignment with who you are, the more you can actually consciously choose to express the high potential of those archetypes in your chart. So we're happiest and most abundant in our current awareness when we're creating in alignment with the highest expression of the archetypes that comprise our quantum human design. The better your story, the better your response to that story, the more wellness you can tap into, the more creativity you have. You literally raise your vibrational frequency, the more influence you have, and the more attractive, the more you're programming through your story, your heart into a state of coherence, and you're calling into your life experiences and opportunities that match the quality of energy you're generating from your heart. Why is this important to know? Because some of the biggest places of challenge when we're either working as healers or when we ourselves are healing our story is that, first of all, we oftentimes are trying to create something we don't really want. We're trying to do the shoulds, right? Well, I should do this, I should do that, because that's the pathway to creating the success that I've been conditioned to believe I need to have in this very successful way, right? And when we try to create something that we don't really want, I call this Band-Aid manifesting, right? Well, I don't really want to do this, but I think I can make a lot of money at it. Once I make the money at it, then I'm going to do what I really want to do. Why don't we always start with what we really want to do in the first place? That's just a question. The second thing that we know from creating is that sometimes we get stuck in the creative process when we try to create something the way that isn't right for us. And of course, human design gives us a lot of deep insights into how do we shift the way in which we create so that we're creating more in alignment with our natural energy flow. You have to know who you're designed to be. This goes back to who is the you that's manifesting your reality. You have to know who you're designed to be and the parts of your soul curriculum. What are you here to learn in order to know how to create what you truly want and decondition that narrative so that you get to take back control over the story you're telling about who you are. The second problem that we always have is, well, what does it mean to decondition? And of course, What that really means is you got to take back control over that story. You have to really learn how to consciously and deliberately tell a story that is worthy of who you are, or support your clients in telling a story that's worthy of who they are. Now, if you start to do the math and you start to break down a human design chart, and you know there's 5 types, there's 12 lines in the profile, there's 9 centers, they're either going to be open or defined, colored in or white. There are 3 circuits, a bunch of sub-circuits. There's 64 gates. Those 64 gates show up in one of 6 lines. If you go really, really deep into human design, underneath all that, there's bases and tones and colors. There's a lot of archetypes in that human design chart. And it takes a long time, I know, because I've been doing it for 23 years, to decondition every little piece of that chart. Now, in my story with human design, I left traditional human design in 2005. My original training is I'm trained as a nurse, and as you saw in the beginning, I'm a life coach by training. I'm an energy healer by training. Ra always said that he was here to teach the mechanics of human design. I love the mechanics of human design, but I don't think that's why I'm here. I've always thought that I was here to help use human design in a therapeutic capacity. I have always been passionate about exploring ways in which we could use human design to accelerate people's growth, to accelerate people's health and wellness. And so when I left traditional human design in 2005, I started on a journey of exploring how could I use human design to really support people in maximizing their potential, really accelerating their capacity to create wellness in their life. I started first by marrying human design with the emotional freedom techniques, that's the tapping, and really had a whole program that I taught called Deconditioning by Design. It was a really powerful program that got a lot of results, but basically we were just strictly looking at mostly the centers and tapping on the themes of the centers. Eventually I started to think this isn't enough. There's so much richness in here. There's so much capacity to use the chart as an assessment tool. And of course, my original training as a nurse is in child development, and I'm a child development specialist. And so I started to really go back and look at an idea that I've been thinking about a lot. I had been thinking about a lot at that time, which is, adults, when they don't have a healthy story, they're oftentimes also living out unhealthy expressions of developmental needs that didn't get met appropriately. So if you didn't learn how to be powerful as a child, you grow up oftentimes and you carry that in your story. You don't feel powerful as an adult. And so my obsession with human design and child development and adult development and psychology brought me to a place where I started to really take the chart apart. And I've done this many times in my life, but I took the chart apart and I thought, if I look at all of these archetypes and I start organizing these archetypes in the chart in alignment with child development and adult developmental challenges, those things we need to really master to be mature. And I really, in particular, looked at this through the lens of Erik Erikson and really began to explore the whole arc of the human story from birth to death. What I did basically, once I started to really look at it, is realize that there's actually not as many archetypes in the chart as we think. There are a lot of pieces of the parts of the story in your human design chart. But really, if I stuck the chart in a blender and mixed it up with child development and adult development, basically what I would come out are some very simple pieces, some very simple core archetypes. Those core archetypes, when they are functioning at the highest level, they actually create a greater capacity for us to consciously choose what we want in our life, to consciously take back control of our story. And so instead of going through the chart and looking at layer by layer by layer by layer by layer by layer, piece by piece by piece by piece by piece, and starting to deconditioning the meaning of every single little archetype in the chart, what I found was that these 9 core archetypes that are basically at the root of everything in the chart, I call these the 9 resiliency keys, that these 9 base archetypes, when they're functioning in a healthy way, give us more choice, allow us to create higher states of coherence, activate higher states of creativity, health, and wellness, and facilitate actually the high expression of the rest of the archetypes in the chart. So these are the 9 core elements that are at the root of healing, manifesting health and resiliency, They have to function at the highest level. And oftentimes when we're struggling with our chart, it's because we're not activating the full potential of these 9 core archetypes. These 9 core archetypes are often at the root of most pain and trauma and our protective identities. So when we create protective identities to hide our authentic self because we don't feel that it's safe to be who we are or how we are in the world, then we create these protective identities that can be oftentimes the root of self-sabotage. So I'm going to read through these quickly. And what I want you to do, and you actually have this in your handout that Jamila posted in the chat for you. I'm going to read these quickly. And I'm going to read them quickly because I want you to intuitively answer for yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being low, 10 being high. How would you rank yourself on these resiliency keys? So bear with me as I go through these kind of quickly, mostly because I don't want you to overthink this. I really want you just to come from your gut and give yourself a number. And as we do this, again, just really please look at this through the lens of curiosity, not through the lens of self-judgment or shame, because we all struggle with all of these. So you're not the only one, I promise. When you go through these and just rank yourself, because I think it's going to give you some really interesting insights about what's living in your story. So the first one is lovability. Can you be loved and accepted for who you are? The second one is empowerment. Do you feel like you have control over your life? The next one is courage. Does fear hold you back? Does fear keep you from fulfilling your joy or your potential? The next one is decisiveness. Do you know how to choose what's right for you? The next one is emotional wisdom. Does emotional energy keep you from acting deliberately? In other words, are you reactive? Do you compromise what you want in order to keep other people happy? The next one is self-trust. Do you trust yourself? We'll be working on that one tomorrow. We'll have a bonus session tomorrow. We'll come and we'll work on self-trust. The next one is vitality. Are you fully expressing your vitality and your energy? The opposite of vitality, by the way, is burnout. The next one is authenticity. Do you feel free or do you feel safe to be who you really are in the world? And last but certainly not least, the last one is self-worth. Do you know how valuable you are? Do you know your value? Again, when these are operating well, they form the foundation of the healthy function of all the parts of your human design chart. Now, if I was going to arrange these, and I really want to throw a cautionary note on the play. Humans are really bad at following formulas. So I can show you this formula. I use this formula when I'm working with clients, but sometimes people will leapfrog over layers, okay? Especially the manifesting generators. But really, if we kind of organize these 9 resiliency keys, what we really see is that the base of all of them is lovability and self-worth. By the way, that's the heart chakra, the G in the will center, right? So the base of all those 9 resiliency keys is lovability and self-worth. Next up in the next layer, we have authenticity, self-trust, emotional wisdom, and empowerment. Then we have on top of that, courage and decisiveness. And last, but definitely not least, vitality. And oftentimes what we see, because burnout is such an epidemic in our culture, that burnout really isn't about having a job you hate or not getting paid enough. Getting a better job isn't going to fix burnout usually. Burnout is usually about spending your vital energy trying to cover up your perceived lack of lovability and your perceived lack of worth. By the way, this is actually what my TED Talk is about. So if you go to TED.com and you search my name, Karen Curry Parker, you'll see my TEDx talk in there. When we tackle these 9 resiliency keys in conjunction with EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, and other techniques, we actually start to see a very systematic and powerful way to help your clients shift their meanings and bring out the full potential and take back sovereignty over the story they tell about who they are. So what I started to do in 2014, 15 is I started to go back to, let's look at the chart. Let's look at the 9 resiliency keys. Let's look at what's going on in the body. Let's look at what's going on emotionally and spiritually. Let's use our intuition, and let's really sit and explore with people, where are they ranking on those 9 resiliency keys. Then what I did is I married those resiliency keys back with EFT, the emotional freedom techniques. In conjunction with that, I added specific, very targeted journaling and writing exercises. Jamie, you've some of you may have met Jamie. Well, hopefully she'll say hi at some point on this call. Jamie and I got together, and Jamie crafted, with her brilliant wisdom, homeopathic flower essence remedies for each of the parts of the chart and for each of the resiliency keys. And so we tapped, we journaled, we looked at the chart, then we started augmenting all the work that we did with these flower essences that work on that subtle body level, that blueprint, and basically stabilize the energy field while the internal physiological, mental, emotional shifts are happening. So we use flower essences, and then a very specific technique called a choice point technique, which uses the gate 61, 63, and 64 to help you reframe your narrative. And coaching, we integrated all of this into a system called the quantum alignment system. When we started implementing the quantum alignment system, we saw that it worked in an integrated way across all layers of the energy field. The subtle body therapy cleared the blueprint, if you will. EFT and quantum human design cleared the emotional layer and the mental layer. The choice point seeds questions tapped into the quantum field. And of course, the journaling, writing, and coaching continued the process of reframing the narrative so that the client could start to take back control over their lives. The results? What we saw is an average of 3 to 7 point increase on the SUD scale. So that's 0 to 10 across the board on all the resiliency keys. So we started tapping with people, integrating the essences, integrated this very targeted, specific coaching process. And on average, we saw a 3 to 7 point increase on a scalar level across all the resiliency keys. We saw significant decreases in physical and emotional pain. We saw significant increases in a sense of well-being, and these results lasted for 6 months or longer. And most of the time, honestly, these results were permanent. And in fact, we have some amazing success stories. We even have a client who used this system and who had been struggling with infertility forever and actually got pregnant and had a baby. So we have a quantum alignment system baby that we check in on regularly. So if this is something that you feel like you would be called to do, if you are really looking for a way to take quantum human design, take energy psychology, research-based, evidence-based energy psychology techniques, implement the homeopathics and flower essence subtle body energies, take your coaching practice and really strengthen it with a specific systematic approach to helping people decondition and rewrite their narrative, I want to invite you to investigate and explore and join me for the quantum alignment system training. So part of what we do in quantum alignment system, we have 3 levels of training. And in this 3 levels of training, quantum alignment system level 1, level 2, and level 3, we go through all the layers in the chart. And in this process of going through all the layers in the chart, we explore the shadow elements. We look at the high elements. We integrate a very specific EFT protocol, so you don't ever have to figure anything out. We have a very specific EFT protocol that we use that we integrate with subtle body therapies, and this highly integrated systematic approach that supports people in going through layer after layer after layer in the chart to support our clients in making that conscious, powerful shift in their narrative. In level 1, you get this powerful pathway to holistic healing that gives you an opportunity for hands-on practice. This is a very integrated training. You don't just learn from videos. We actually have live intensives. You get paired with a partner. You go through several months of really learning the system. We have mentors that come and help you. So you really are getting an integrated, deep approach to how to use and implement the quantum alignment system. You learn using our comprehensive evidence-based techniques that support physical and subtle body energy shifts. We work with the aura. We help you really work with harnessing the power of the quantum field to foster lasting changes in yourself, because it oftentimes becomes about yourself first as the practitioner, and then ultimately helping you help your clients. You're going to unlock your true potential and you'll experience profound professional growth and personal growth. I mean, that's the thing I think I love the most about this program is we start thinking, oh, I'm going to be a healer, or I'm going to use this to deepen my healing skill set. And then we end up getting our own socks knocked off first, which is so amazing because you can only lead your clients as far as you yourself have gone. And the more you clear your own stuff, the more you decondition your own story, the more space you create for you to really elevate your clients' success as well. You're going to benefit from a wealth of ancient knowledge and techniques. We have a proprietary way of using EFT tapping protocols. Of course, you'll learn how to really use those 9 resiliency keys, flower essences. As I said, you get 9 live tapping sessions with deep personal experience as well as support from mentors. And we have monthly meetings where you get to come and be a part of our community and learn and grow your skill set. You're going to learn practical tools that are going to help you navigate how to build your own practice, how to help you with your clients better. They're going to help you make shifts for yourself and your clients. You're going to learn how to blast through limiting mindsets. You're going to learn how to develop a resilient nervous system, and you're going to learn about the power, including the science, of rewriting personal narratives. When you enroll in the Quantum Alignment System Level 1, you get access to incredibly powerful tools so that you can fulfill your calling to help others all over the world. Not only that, we take a lot of great pride in building a community that is nurturing and supportive. We know that community and hands on your back are not only essential to the learning process, but they also sustain you when you open up your practice and become a healer. You know, the world and the stories we witness sometimes can really touch us. And having a community that you can come back to that can support you and nurture you in that process of learning and strengthening your own skill set as a healer, helping, bear witness to you. When I tap with people, and I've been doing this for almost 24 years, I still have to check in with my people. I check in with Jamie, or I'll check in with some of my other practitioners, because sometimes it weighs heavy on my heart when I hear some of the stories that I hear. I sometimes have to really tap and clear myself because it breaks my heart when my clients are hurting. You also get access to ongoing support, guidance, shared experiences, and of course, a supportive environment. We've got people that are best friends because they really learned and worked together in this program. So you'll get a really incredible community that helps you with your growth and, of course, your success. The Head Center, which is called the Quantum Interface Center in Quantum Human Design, is associated with the resiliency keys of decisiveness and self-trust. The Ajna, the Divine Translator Center, is associated also with the resiliency keys of decisiveness and self-trust. The Throat Center, or the Activation Center in Quantum Human Design, is associated with the resiliency keys of authenticity and vitality. The G Center, or the Calibration Center in Quantum Human Design, is associated with lovability, decisiveness, courage, and authenticity. The Will Center, or the Resource Center in Quantum Human Design, is associated with self-worth, vitality, and empowerment. The Emotional Solar Plexus, or the Creative Center, is associated with the resiliency keys of courage, emotional wisdom, decisiveness, and empowerment. The Root Center, or the Divine Timing Center, is associated with the resiliency keys of vitality and empowerment. The Spleen Center is associated with the resiliency keys of self-trust and courage. And the Sacral Center is associated with the resiliency keys of decisiveness, vitality, courage, and empowerment. That's it. I want to thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for being here. And I really look forward to having you in the training and seeing you in the program. If you want to heal the world, join me, because that's what we're on fire about here. So join our team and help you change this world and make it the world that's worth living, the world that's worthy of our infinite potential. So be well, take care. Bye.